Hey guys, and welcome to this video, which is a follow-on from a previous video which looked at the overview of the Fadeport 8 as it integrated into Harrison 32C. I'm really excited to be doing this video because in the last video all I could really do is look at a high-level view of the many functions that are controllable via the Fadeport 8. And one of the most powerful features of how Fadeport 8 integrates into 32C is control of VSTs and control of the onboard EQ and compression. I've set up a very simple session because running the screen cap software and Reaper to record my voice and 32C, when I push play on the 32C, it leads to some slowing down of the audio. So hopefully this works. If it doesn't, then I'm afraid we're going to have slightly imperfect audio coming through. And I must apologize for not recording a direct feed from 32C because I haven't worked out how to do that yet. So in a future video. I must just apologize because I find it really difficult to get a camera to capture both what's happening on the Fadeport as a whole and what's happening on the scribble strips. So I've got my decent camera focusing only on the scribble strips and my crappy webcam capturing what's happening on the rest of Fadeport. Just a reminder of how to access your plugins via the Fadeport 8. You need to select your track first. On your selected track, then you push your edit plugins button. On my snare track, you can see I don't have any VSTs loaded. So what happens is you've got select buttons highlighted. This refers to the Harrison EQ, and that refers to Harrison EQ, and this button refers to the Harrison compressor, and this button refers to Harrison compressor. Why is that? Well, basically, if you select your EQ using this green button on the left, and you then go and move channels using your channel select, you can see me changing channels. The EQ remains focused on an EQ for the first channel that you selected. If however you select the EQ using the yellow select button on the right hand side, and now I move channels, the EQ selection changes. And that's pretty cool when, for instance, you're setting up a mix at the beginning of your process and you, for instance, want to change the high pass and low pass filters for all your tracks. So now I'm looking at the EQ. You can see high pass frequency, low pass frequency, high frequency, high gain, high mid frequency, high mid gain, low mid frequency, low mid gain, and then you can scroll over and you've got low frequency and low gain. And then you see these buttons highlighted. So this, if you can see that says EQ enable, filter enable, high bell enable. On 32C you've got the high frequency band can either be a bell curve or a shelf. So you can select or deselect your bell curve. And again, in your bottom frequency you can either select as a shelf or as a bell. So you can bypass your EQ and you can bypass your filter or enable. Okay, so how does it work? Well, pretty cool. Let me work on high pass filter. It's quite smooth. Low pass filter, and then the EQs are also pretty cool. The resolution is very good. You can really take it very subtle moves on the EQs using the Fadeport 8. If you need to work your low band, then you just scroll over and you can work your low band. Alright. Okay, so that's a EQ. Your compressor, very similar. So you got your threshold. Then whatever mode you're in, this third fader then changes your mode. So in 32C you can have limiter mode, compressor mode, and leveler. And the second fader then changes whatever function you have available to you depending on the mode. So we change the mode to then becomes a ratio, limiter, becomes a release function, and you can do auto gain. And similarly, you can bypass your compression. Okay. All right, so that's looking at all the built-in EQ and compression. If you solo your track before you then go in and you want to edit a plugin, while you're playing and while you're manipulating your plugin, you can toggle your solo. All right, so far be it for me to tell you how to mix, but really you should be A/Bing your whatever mix moves you're doing, not only when you're isolating on that track, but also within the context of the bigger mix. So again, for me, this is one of those very useful functions of being able to control your mix from the Fadeport 8 is this toggle solo. Okay, I want to try and nail that high frequency. So simple. And the same happens for mute. If you mute a couple of tracks and then you can use the mute clear button to toggle between having the other tracks muted while you working in the effect. Alright, so that's the onboard EQ and compression. The other thing you can do with your plugins is you can use the Fadeport 8 to help you select your presets. So I've just loaded up the Leisure Alpha by Plugin Alliance, select it. And what you can see up here, you can see in your top gray section, you've got the option to select presets. Once you've selected that effect, if you push the parameter knob, if you will be able to see, you can see there's the names of different presets, so you can actually select a preset. And then go back there, still selected. Now if I select a preset and I make some mix moves, it now flashes, showing you that in fact, although you selected a preset, you now have made some changes. Okay. Use the REQ2, the Renaissance EQ by Waves. Right, so I've selected my track and now I go to edit, plugin edit mode, and I select my REQ2. So let's see what you can see here. So the functions come up across here, and if there's more than 8 functions, you can bank across by pushing shift. Let's get this up here. Pushing shift and then moving the parameter knob. Shift, by the way, I mean, just allows you to bank to the next 8. Okay, so if you don't select shift, you'll just go move one parameter at a time. Right, so what do we have? We have band 1 on off, band 1 type, band 1 gain, band 1 frequency, band 1 Q, and then band 6. So why band 6? Well, it seems like the manufacturers have their own unique way of naming some of their parameters. So bearing in mind that the Renaissance EQ, I think you get up to, what's it, the 10 or the 8 version, anyway, I can't remember. So obviously they chose for REQ2, they chose band 1 and band 6. So band 6 on off, band 6 type, band 6 gain, frequency, Q, and then output. And it pretty much works as advertised. So band 1 off, on off, turn it on. I can change the mode. Okay, and then change the gain, frequency Q. And that's band 6 on off. Okay. So the cool thing is you can work frequency Q and gain at the same time. Okay. Okay. Very simple, very easy, and like I said, it doesn't matter how many parameters are, you can scroll through or you can bank through using the shift button. Now, what happens if you got a more complicated plugin? And for that, I think I'm going to use the F6 by Waves. While we're here, you see I've added, if you can see up there, there's VST, which is REQ, and F6 mono. If you want to, you can also, when you use the edit plugin overview mode, if you push shift and select, you turn the plugins off. So if you can see over here, turning the REQ to on, off, or F6 on, off, both of them on, both of them off. Or if you push the bypass, say if you in the edit plugin overview mode, push bypass and you bypass all whatever plugins you have active on that track. Very cool. Alright, so I've loaded a F6 onto the snare channel, and we're going to edit it. So open it up. I've put the channel into solo so I can toggle solo on and off. And what do I have here? I've got high pass on and off, high pass Q, high pass frequency, high pass solo, low pass on and off, low pass Q, low pass frequency, low pass solo. So what's that? On, let's turn it on, and let's work our frequency. Okay, and you can do the same on the low pass filter. But now I want to go work some different parameters. So when you push shift, turn the parameter knob. Let me just make it a bit easier. Turn the parameter knob, and I bank to the next 8. And what do we have here? We've got band 1 on off, band 1 type, band 1 frequency, band Q, band 1 gain, band 1 range, band 1 threshold, band 1 attack, which takes you up to here. You can see that it follows basically the sequence that the plugin follows. So in order to access the release and the solo, I need to push shift, bank to the next 8, and you got release, sidechain source, sidechain mode, and solo. So if I wanted to solo, I could do that. Okay. Now I want to change the frequency. I'll just go back to the bank and just find the frequency. So say I wanted to find a frequency that's annoying me. Okay, it's good enough for now. And say I wanted to, okay, now I want to just solo make sure I've got the right frequency. Solo. Work the Q. Take it off solo. And then now, you know, alright, so none of fine-tuned mix move that, but basically you see how quickly I can, by using the banks, I can access all the parameters for band 1 and work the gain, the frequency, the Q together. So you have a similar thing if you wanted to scroll to band 2. Now, I see band 2 starts on off there, so if you wanted to go to the beginning of band 2, now it's over there, and you can then go into band mode if you wanted to edit just band 2. And a similar thing for band 3, band 4, you know, up to band 6. So obviously when you are dealing with band 6, you have to scroll through, bank through, should I say, quite a few pages, and now I'm up to bank 6. So yes, when you have a complex VST, you will end up banking through. So you need to become comfortable with banking. And the second thing you need to do is become knowledgeable or have a bit of muscle memory with regarding your plugins. So by now I know that the F6, what it looks like, the fact that the parameters follow a particular sequence and they will follow the same sequence in Fadeport 8. And I can pretty quickly move around and manipulate the various bands using the Fadeport 8. But now there is another way to use the Fadeport 8 to control the F6. So if you right click on the plugin and you go edit with generic controls. Okay. Now you can see I got all my bands here. Band 1 and 2, band 3, band 4. So obviously you don't have the GUI, so you don't have a very nice view on it. But if you look here on Fadeport 8, I'm pushing the link button. Now whenever I scroll over an editable function, the link button turns yellow. So if I knew I was working band, say band 5, and I wanted to work the frequency, let me just play something and then I'll show you. If I want to say work frequency, I hover the mouse over there and now I can use the parameter. Sorry, it keeps moving. Let's move this over a bit. I can use the parameter knob to change frequency. And the Q and the gain. So let's just try that. Alright, so if you got a complicated plugin and you know your way around it, you know what the functions do, and you don't need to actually look at a picture, then very quickly you can bounce around. So cool, that was band 5. Now I want to, for instance, get a bit of low honk. I can do that here. I'll go to band 3. Gain. The only challenge with using this, the parameter knob doesn't have as high resolution as when you are using the faders. So you go, I suppose it's at 0.01 of a percent. Because the other thing you can see here is, these are not absolute numbers, but let's say your gain would be neutral at 0.5, be max at 1, and minimum at 0. Rather than what I would assume is say max at 18 dB and minimum and minus 18. So that's maybe two downsides to using the method. One is the resolution isn't as refined, and you are working with a sort of a generic number feedback. But the cool thing about that though is you should be using your ears, so ultimately really shouldn't matter what the numbers are telling you and only what your ears are telling you. So I suppose that's a good compromise solution if you are working a very complicated plugin that you know well, and you don't need to look at pretty pictures, and you can edit in the generic control mode. So basically, I think just to summarize working with VSTs, one is when you are working with a VST that is fairly complicated, the better you know it, the more you'll be able to work it. So there is a element of being comfortable with the plugins and knowing what they do to be able to work with them comfortably with the Fadeport 8. I find that, especially on plugins I use a lot, it becomes almost second nature. You start to know where the parameters are, and it's really such a bonus to be able to work very finely with your faders, and you can work more than one parameter at a time. So as you fine tuning a tone or a sound or an effect or your chorus or your what have you, it makes such a difference to, instead of like working one parameter at a time with your mouse. And more than that, it's not just the fact that you can work more than one parameter, is the fact that your interface with this controller allows you to stop worrying about numbers. You're not looking at a screen where you're focusing, okay, what frequency I am, what's my gain? Is my Q looking a bit tight? And B, your physical control of the unit is much more comfortable, is that the word? Is much more dynamic, is much more almost competent or confident in the physical control of the moves that you're making. It really allows you to stop worrying about what your hand's doing on the mouse and to pay attention to what your ears are telling you. And ultimately, you can control your plugin without even looking at it. So often, although it's on my screen, I won't be looking at the plugin. I will just be fine-tuning my frequency, fine-tuning my Q, my gain, and I'm not looking at what the settings are showing me. All I'm doing is I'm making sure I'm manipulating the right parameter and using my ears as I work the parameter. So get to know your plugin and get to know the patterns that the manufacturer has used when creating that plugin, and then you'll start finding your way around the complicated plugins pretty quickly. Alright. If you'd like to automate your plugins, unfortunately you can't use the Fadeport automation section, but there is a way around that. So if you go to your edit window, and now I would like to automate, say, the low pass filter on the F6. So you go to your snare channel, choose F6 mono, and let's find the low pass frequency. Then you need to set that in, and alright, you can see it's changing now. So let's just cool. Now let's just go to play mode, and you can see the parameter changing on the plugin, and you can see the fader move. Alright, so you can automate your plugins like that. All it takes is just setting it up, the functionality within edit window, and then whatever moves you make here, as long as you put it into write or touch mode, 32C will record your moves. when you're working with effects, you're not just working them on your channel itself, but you're also sending to either your mix buses or your utility buses. So very quickly, let me just show you to do that. I want to send my snare to reverb, and you can either use your send functionality on Fadeport 8. Okay, let me say I want to fine tune. But now say you want to work on your reverb while you're working in the sense, you want to fine tune both. So coming back to the link mode, you can go into link mode, and now let's see reverb size. Okay, busy working. Alright, so you've got a reverb set up in the utility bus, or even you can have it set up in your mix bus, and you go reverb send, and now you want to quickly adjust multiple functions. You want to adjust your send while you're busy working on your reverb time or your reverb size. So that's one way of doing it. If you use your link modes, you can quickly bounce around between different settings. Now, I still find this preferable to using the mouse, but for some reason, using the mouse interferes for me with the process of mixing. It doesn't help with the process of mixing. Whereas if I scroll with the mouse, but I can use a parameter knob to make the adjustments, it's much better for me. So that's one way of working with link mode to bounce between various parameters while you are fine-tuning a mix. I think the last thing before we conclude, I just want to show you that some plugins are a bit weird when it comes to the Fadeport 8. And one company where something odd happens every time you put in their plugins is Mulder. Let's go Auto Dynamic EQ. Great plugin, by the way, but a bit odd when it comes to controlling it via the Fadeport 8. So I wonder if you guys can see. Here it says parameter 1. So I'm on my first bank, right? Parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3, parameter 4. So basically there's nothing I can edit on the first page. And you can see that when you open up generic control. Got all the parameters here. And the things the parameters you really want to get to are probably like 6 banks down, no more, 10 banks across. So here it's like, okay, I'm going to be banking through multiple times until I get to EQ1. So here's EQ1, gain, Q, etc. Or probably more likely is use link mode. Open up in generic control mode and then just use the link to control. So Mulder is the only company I see where I don't know why they do it, but there's, let's see, 64 parameters before you get to anything you can actually control. And then the other little quirk I found was, what's it, Waves Shape 73 stereo. I'm just going to put a stereo instance on there. Now what I found here was nothing traumatic, but if you are, so now I'm looking at, let me just find, okay, high gain. So I've got high gain left mid, or high gain right side. So in the plugin I'm in stereo mode, so there'll be high gain left and right. And I think I'm in link mode. So as I move as I manipulate the high gain, you can see that the right fader stays still. So although this is moving left and right, it's not moving the fader. So what can happen is, okay, you want to, for instance, you now move your right fader, it jumps it back to where this fader is sitting. So those are basically the only two quirks I found with plugins. I hope part of the message out of this video is not just what you can do to control faders and how powerful it is to be able to do that, but also the fact that there's many peripheral functions. I mean, you saw me having the transport controls right there, being able to toggle the solo and mute on and off while you're editing and fine-tuning your sounds, being able to bypass your plugins while you're in the plugin, being able to move more than one parameter at a time, and having like an intuitive way of adjusting plugin parameters. So I find moving a fader way more intuitive, and it allows me to connect to that parameter I'm working in a way that I just really can't do with the mouse. So that's the one thing. If I can also just give a shout out to Harrison for how they've implemented the Fadeport 8 into 32C and the Mixbus platform. Because for instance, Studio One, whilst it can get complicated if you're using a plugin with a lot of parameters, A, you get used to it, you can find your way around the plugin, and B, sometimes a little bit of sweat to bank your way through to the right parameters is well worth the effort of the control that you get with the Fadeport 8. The other thing is, I find that having fine movement and fine control and not having to look at numbers and not having to pay attention to what the pretty graphics are telling me makes for an immensely better approach to mixing and using your ears for the mixing process. And I actually want to have another video on this very topic, but the ability to play with your effects, and I use that word advisedly, to play, because you really should be playing and you really should be kind of experimenting and using your body interacting with the effects to mix. So I find mixing with a mouse extremely static, and actually it pulls you away from the experience of mixing and playing with your mix. And so far, this Fadeport 8 integrating to 32C is such a cool combo that I find myself playing with the mix way more than I ever would have thought possible. So in closing, this video is probably not for the faint of heart, but I really hope I've maybe helped you decide if this combination is for you, if you're in the decision-making process, or maybe some different ways of work that you can work using the Fadeport 8 with 32C. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video or it gave you you find it beneficial, please do subscribe, and I will be putting up more videos on the Fadeport 8 and the Harrison 32C, and yeah, hope to see you guys again soon. Cheers.